Here's something that probably sounds familiar. Say you're in a meeting, you make a clear point about a project timeline and you hold your ground when it's challenged. Nothing might be said. Meanwhile, your male colleague, who said essentially the same thing 10 minutes later, gets praised for being confident and taking charge. Welcome to the double standard that women in male-dominated industries know all too well. I'm Tanya Andrews, and over the past decade, I have worked with hundreds of women across industries such as construction, mining, energy, and tech who have navigated this exact challenge. Here's the thing. Sometimes, in the moment, you do need to be decisive and directional. You need to push for an outcome, cut through noise, or just make a call. And honestly, that urge to be clear and firm comes from a completely valid place. It's frustration. Because you haven't been heard, you're feeling invisible because contributions aren't being acknowledged, or maybe stuck because the same roadblocks keep appearing. These feelings are valid. Taking action in response to those feelings is not automatically aggression. If you deliver it with clarity, calm, and respect, that's assertiveness, and it's a strong step in the direction of leadership. So in this video, I'm going to give you tools to be clear, firm, and respected without tipping into aggression or playing small. Now, before we can practice being assertive, we need to get crystal clear on what it actually looks and sounds like, and just importantly, what it doesn't. Now, the fear that you might have around how far is too far, what's appropriate exactly, basically comes from this blurring of assertiveness with aggression. Now, being assertive means you respect yourself and you respect others, okay? So you're clear about what you need, but you're not dismissive or rude about it. Aggression, on the other hand, is when you prioritize getting your way over everything and everyone else. You might dismiss other people's concerns or come across as sort of forceful and emotional. Now, submissive, on the other hand, is when you downplay what you need. Maybe you over-apologize for everything, or you just stay really vague so people don't even know what you're asking for. Now, here's something important to understand if you're early in your career. Without a well-developed communication style, it's easy to swing between submissive and aggressive, especially when you find yourself under pressure. You might stay quiet for weeks and then explode when you've just had enough, or make rash decisions, which is not a good idea. Or you might over-apologize for everything and then suddenly demand an outcome without setting the right context. So just take a second and consider this. Where do you naturally sit on this behavioral range? Does it change depending on whether you're speaking to your peers or people more senior than you or clients? Or maybe it's about how high the stakes are in any given conversation. Once you know where you sit, the next step is having practical kind of go-to strategies so you don't have to rely on instinct alone. There are ways to hold your ground and communicate clearly even when things get tense. One of the easiest ways to avoid awkward, high-pressure moments is to actually set the tone before the conversation or the meeting even starts. You do this by signaling your intention and creating a natural boundary up front so that when you assert yourself later, it feels completely in flow. You've set the expectations. So try like a signposting statement, such as, I'll run through these 3 points and then I'm happy for discussion. Or you can time box it. So say something like, give me 2 minutes uninterrupted and then I'm gonna open it up. This is especially valuable early in your career because preempting is a low-risk way to assert your voice without waiting for the conflict to actually happen. You're not being demanding, you're being organized and professional. But even with the best preempting, you're still going to find yourself in situations where you need to speak up or maybe push back or make a clear request. And that's where having structured frameworks in your back pocket makes all the difference. So these formulas make it easier to be clear and assertive without tipping into what others might perceive as rude or aggressive. And they stop you from scrambling for the right words in the moment. So the first framework I want to share with you is really simple. When you need to address something, you just follow this pattern. Describe what's happening, explain why it matters, and then make a clear request. So this sounds like when delivery dates slip, it impacts our ability to meet the client's deadline because the rest of the project can't move forward without your component. I need confirmation we'll receive it by Friday as agreed. Keep it short, factual, focused on solutions, not blame. So this works because it keeps emotions and personal interpretations out of the conversation. So the focus stays on the facts at hand and really practical next steps. So this brings down the risk of others getting sidetracked by assumptions about maybe what your motivations or intent are. You want to use this in situations where you need someone to take an action, honor a commitment, fix an issue without the conversation spiraling into defensiveness, especially when you've got time-sensitive or high-stake kind of environments. The second one is called BRAN, B-R-A-N, and that's just a way to remember the key pieces you need. So with this one, you set a boundary, that's what's okay and what's not. You give a reason as to why that matters. You make a specific ask, and you agree on what happens next. So that might sound like, I can't take on more work this week because my current deadlines are tight. Could we look at reallocating tasks? Let's decide today so I can plan my schedule. So this works because it gives you this clear, repeatable structure that keeps the conversation anchored in boundaries, logic, and action. When you walk through each step, you're making it easier for the other person to understand your position and then commit that way forward. This is especially good for situations where you need to push back on requests, protect your workload, or reset expectations, particularly when there's a risk of scope creep. The priorities might be shifting, you've got unclear responsibilities. So the last framework is called the calm loop. This is about staying steady when someone pushes back. And I admit, it can take a little bit more strength and courage to execute when power dynamics are working against you. But if you can master it, it's also arguably the most powerful approach. Acknowledge their point, restate your ask without changing it, and hold silence to give them space to respond. An example of this in practice would be, I hear the timeline's important, I still need that information by Thursday to do it properly. Stop talking. What you want to be careful there is to not slide into passive aggressive. We're not taking a jab at the other person. We're just trying to stay calm, consistent, and in control. So even if that other person tries to derail the conversation, you've held steadfast. You're acknowledging their point, which shows that you are listening, you understand, but by restating your ask without softening it, you're reinforcing your position while you're then giving them the space to process and respond. And I'm not gonna lie, the stop talking bit can be the hardest part of that whole strategy, but the more you do it and you get used to that slightly uncomfortable feeling for a second, you see why that is the really effective part. So you want to use this strategy in situations where you know pushback's coming, you know there's already some resistance, or maybe they've already attempted to sidestep your request. When you're in tense and high pressure or politically sensitive situations, this is helpful for you to just keep everything very focused on point, and we don't let conversations derail. And remember, it's not just what you say, but it's how you say it that matters as much. Shoulders open, calm tone, short sentences. Now, even with the most measured, respectful delivery, you're going to still run into defensiveness. People like to minimize things or use humor to kind of brush you off. It's normal. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, and it's not a cue to back down. What you might see happening is that someone gets defensive and they're just like, that's not what I meant. You can respond with, I appreciate that. I'm asking so we can avoid the same issue next time. Or they might try to minimize it, just sort of brush it off like, relax, it's not that big a deal. That's when you say, I'm serious about this. It's important because, and you give them your reason. Sometimes people will just try to change the subject entirely. Like, we'll just come back to that later. Don't let them. You can say, actually, I'd like to wrap up this point before we move on. So in any of these situations, the goal is you're staying calm, you're repeating your message, and you're bringing it back to facts and outcomes. You're signaling that you mean what you say, but you're not raising that emotional temperature. Now, I know this is going to feel uncomfortable at first, and you are going to worry about things like, I don't want to be too direct, and what if people don't like it? But honestly, I promise you, the more you practice these responses, the more natural they become. And the clearer you are about what you need, the more respect you actually earn. And one thing I want you to do is pay attention in meetings where you can see people being assertive and clear and getting outcomes, and watch, because they are executing these frameworks because they have practiced them and now it is second nature for them. So now you've got preemptive techniques to set the tone before things get tense. You've got 3 frameworks: the assertion message, brand, and the calm loop to help you stay structured when you need to speak up. And you've got strategies for handling that pushback without losing your footing. The earlier you build this muscle, the less you're going to find yourself boxed into either that too nice category or the too aggressive label. And look, remember, being assertive isn't about bulldozing. It's about being clear, respectful, consistent. So this week, I want you to try writing out 3 assertive sentences for situations that you're coming up against at work. It might be things like you need clearer specs on a project, or you need to push back an unrealistic deadline, or maybe you just would like to be included in a decision that affects your work. Write them down and practice them out loud. I've also left a free download in the description. It's a set of rephrasing scripts that help you take statements that you're not sure if they're sort of submissive or maybe aggressive and brings them into being assertive instead. Remember, you have every right to be heard, respected, and taken seriously at work. Being assertive is not about being difficult, it's about being professional and getting it done. You've got this.